Everyone, in this video, we're going to look at value proposition and explain really how you formulate a good value proposition for your idea. Okay, to have a brand at any level, even the most basic form of a brand, even the most basic form of drop shipping and selling random products, you are going to be so much more successful if you have a value proposition for your business, all right? So once you have your idea, once you've narrowed in on what it is you want to do, next you need to identify what your value proposition is going to be. And in the simplest terms, all right, to define this, the simplest terms of defining a value proposition is basically what makes you different. What value are you providing to your audience that is a reason good enough for them to spend their hard-earned money on whatever it is you're selling. All right, that's a value proposition. You're trying to sell something to me. Why should I buy it? What is the reason? Why should I not go to your competitor and buy something from them instead of from you, right? This is so important, and most people miss this completely. You think that, oh, just because this person has a product that they're selling over here, if I sell the same product, then I should be able to do the same thing. And that's not necessarily true, because you might be completely overlooking the entire value proposition of their brand and their marketing, right? And so this is a really important concept to grasp. Now, here's a nice chart that can kind of help you understand how you identify a value proposition, right? Because it's a little bit of an abstract concept, but here's what we're going to look at, all right? So when it comes to a business, basically there's three main characters in that story, okay? There's you, there's your competitors, and there's your prospect or your audience or your niche or your target market, whatever you want to call it, right? So there's you in this circle. This is you in your business, okay? And this is what you are selling, basically, right? It says what you do very well, but the idea of that is, what are you selling? What kind of product, what kind of service, what kind of offer do you have, right? And so that's going to be here. Now, there's your competitors, all right? Your competitors that sell the same thing or something similar, right? That's why they're a competitor. Your competitors are only businesses or companies or people that are out there selling something very, very similar to what you're selling. And then there's your prospect. Every single one of you has a unique element to you, right? You have what you think is the best offer that you are creating. Your prospect has what they think is the offer that they really want. And then there's what is already on the marketplace from your competitors. And then you can see where the overlap is, all right? So where your offer overlaps with your competitor's offer down here, but it doesn't actually include something that the prospect wants, then nobody cares, right? Because the prospect is the only thing that matters in this equation, all right? Well, I shouldn't say that, but the prospect is what matters the most, okay? So here is the only things that really matter the most are going to be what falls into the spectrum of what your prospect wants, all right? So when we move over a segment to the overlap here between what your prospect wants, okay, what you also offer, but your competitor offers the same exact thing. This is called copycat, right? This is when you're trying to just sell the exact same thing as what your competitors are already selling and providing to your prospect. That's copycat. That's a me too. That's not a real value proposition, because all you're doing is copying and trying to do what somebody else is doing, and that's a race to the bottom, right? When everybody races to the bottom and you have no creativity, then you just have a bunch of people competing on the same thing and trying to undercut each other on price. Price is not a value price can be a value proposition, but only if it's in like a really unique way. Just trying to have discount pricing is not a value proposition, all right? At this point, I should say at this point, right? Like Walmart might disagree with that, but for you, okay, just, it's not, right? That shouldn't be where your value proposition is going to be, because that becomes kind of a race to the bottom, right? And you see that a lot right now in drop shipping, right? Like everybody's out there trying to copycat the same products and sell it all at the same time. So it becomes a race to the bottom of these stores, and, like it's just not where you want to be. Now, over here, what your competitors are doing really well and your prospect wants, but is outside the reach of what you can provide, don't go there, right? Don't try to sell something that you can't deliver. Don't try to provide a promise on something that you can't deliver. That's what this means here. So if you see something that your competitors are doing well and you know that your prospect, like it's within the market, don't try to do it if you can't fulfill it. Don't try to compete on something that you know you can't do as well as your competitor, because then you're just going to get, that's a game over. You're going to lose that game every single time. So here's where you want to live, right? You want to find something unique that you do really well, that your prospect wants, that is outside of what your competitors are already doing. That's a unique value proposition idea. Now, I'm going to take you through some practical examples of how you can kind of think about that, right? Because I know that can be a little abstract as a concept, but that's really where you want to be, right? Is the offer that you have and looking at what's already out there on the market and what your prospect wants. You want to think about, how can I innovate this to be a little bit different, all right? And again, that's not price, right? Because just trying to cut on price on the same exact thing is not innovating. That's not value, okay? It's you want to try to think about maybe how you can change the deliverables, or how you can change the sales process, or how you can deliver more value for less of a cost, right? Now that's different. If you're delivering more value for less cost, now it's not just like, oh, we're undercutting price on the same exact thing. You're actually changing the model up a little bit because you're delivering more value for less of a price, right? So how can you innovate value in your offer, right? Getting a little bit practical about trying to step outside of that. When you look at your competitors and you look at what's already being done in the marketplace of something your prospect wants, what can you do? All right. Here are 4 things that I think you can really focus on. And I didn't create these ideas, right? But these are 4 things that are proven within business strategies that you can try to innovate on, right? Innovate the value of the offer to be different. Number 1, time. So when and how often. Not all of these have to apply. Okay, let me say that before we go any further. Like, these are just all 4 different ways. So like the time of which it takes to get something, or the time in which something is delivered, right? So 2-day shipping. Prime, Amazon Prime is an example of time. They innovated the marketplace, and Amazon's done a lot of things. I know I've mentioned them before. It's hard not to talk about Amazon when you talk about e-commerce. But say what you will about Amazon and how they've treated their competition. They innovated on the value of an online marketplace by changing the time in which somebody could get something delivered to them with 2-day shipping, right? Design, okay? How can you change the design? How can something be more unique? Function, what can be better? That could be adding something to the function or even subtracting something. Maybe something is out there and you can make it more simple. You can make it work better in less steps. Or maybe it's something that you need to add more to make it more of a complete offer, right? And price. Price is another one. Again, just competing on like undercutting price, I don't believe in and of itself is really a value proposition, okay, at this point, because it's been done so much, right? Like if you were the first Walmart to ever come out, or the first IKEA, but they didn't just innovate on price either. They innovated on the offering as well by making things more available at a lower price. But exclusive pricing or luxury items, like that can be luxury items. What I'm trying to say here is, like, if you have like a VIP type of club where you offer exclusive pricing to people for select items, right? That could be innovating on an offer. There's an example of affordable pricing, because a lot of times it doesn't just have to do with the price itself, right? An example of that, there's a company called GrabJet, something, I forget what it's called actually, but basically it's an app. You might have heard of it. It's an app where you can group share jet rides. Okay, and it's really cool because it makes a private jet a lot more affordable of a price for somebody than just renting it on yourself. You can group share private jets. So, but they didn't, I mean, there's multiple value innovations in that, not only making it more affordable to everybody, but also innovating on the way that you can actually book a private jet, right? So these are just ways that, again, I try to offer an example in each, but you're going to have to think about this in terms of your market and your product and what you're doing, and think about these 4 things, and are there ways that something in one of these categories could apply? And then I want to talk about the blue ocean strategy, okay? This is a fantastic book that you should absolutely read. The blue ocean strategy is basically the idea that when you innovate on value, when you come from a creative standpoint of trying to look at what's already out there and do it better, or, focus on one of these 4 things that can help you change the game, basically, change the offer in the marketplace, then it becomes a blue ocean. Red ocean is competing in existing market space, right? This is the idea of sharks in an ocean together all chomping at the same fish, okay? The red ocean is filled with blood. All right, that's where most people are. They're competing in that existing market space. They're all trying to do the same exact thing. It becomes a race to the bottom. It becomes very, very competitive and hard to do because everybody's just undercutting each other on pricing, and, that's a hard business model to sustain, right? When you have a blue ocean strategy, the idea is that you're creating uncontested market space because you're doing something different. And we're going to look at some examples of this, right? The idea with the blue ocean strategy, like we talked about earlier in the academy with the creativity versus competition, right? When you come from a creative standpoint, you make competition irrelevant. Okay? When you create new demand for something because you create a new idea, basically you can take something and innovate it and it becomes like a new idea. That's going to create new demand because nobody else is offering it. All right? Value cost trade-off. Basically the idea of value cost trade-off. This is where I say that you can innovate on price, but it's got to be more of a value cost trade-off, right? And the value cost trade-off is when generally the higher something is in value, the higher the cost is, okay? But if you can create a situation where the value actually goes up compared to what competitors are offering and your price goes down to what competitors are charging, now you've innovated in a way that is going to be hard for them to compete. You've created a new market space for yourself because you have taken the value up higher, taken the cost down lower. That's really interesting. That's innovation. You're not just keeping the same exact thing and trying to undercut on the price. There's no differentiation there because then they can just drop the price too. And then aligning with a whole system of that one's a little abstract because you don't have to generally be a large firm. So let's move on to an example. Okay, and these are examples from actual companies that have done this, and I tried to choose ones with physical products. All right, Nintendo Wii. The Nintendo Wii, this is a gaming system, all right, launched in 2006 with value innovation. And the key principle behind their blue ocean strategy was low cost differentiation, okay? Low cost and differentiation at the same exact time, right? Because there were a lot of gaming systems, and so they wanted to bring the cost down while also being different from everything else that's in the market. So to reduce the cost, what Nintendo did is got rid of the hard disk and DVD functionality that was in most of the stuff at the time and reduced the processing quality and graphics, right? Because at that time, a lot of it was based on like a race to the higher graphics, with like the PlayStations and the Xbox, right? So Nintendo's trying to compete in this space. PlayStation and Xbox were fairly pricey systems to buy, and so Nintendo did away with that hard disk, right? Reduced the processing. At the same time, they introduced the new wireless motion control, which if you've seen the Wii, you know what that is. And that was brand new to the, that was a new concept, right? They introduced a wireless motion control stick that was different than what any other type of control on the market was. Automatically, by doing that, they created new market space because they were doing something different than PlayStation or Xbox. They had regular controllers and were using, regular controllers and were still using discs and racing on processing, right? They were competing with each other. Nintendo decided to do something completely different, right? And by doing something completely different, that allowed them to offer new features, new different types of benefits that hadn't been seen previously in the world of gaming. They created uncontested market space, and the Nintendo Wii went on to be a huge success. Okay, so by pursuing that innovation, they went beyond what PlayStation and Xbox were doing in that that crowded, fierce red ocean, and opened up their new market. Now let's look at an example of a company called Yellowtail. Yellowtail is a wine company. Now it's interesting if you read about the wine, and Yellowtail is actually an example right out of the Blue Ocean Strategy book. It's interesting if you look at the wine industry, because prior to Yellowtail, wine was a very obscure type of industry, right? It was mostly focused on like the idea of exclusivity and luxury and hard to understand, hard to pronounce. That's the whole idea of a sommelier, right? It was you needed a wine expert to explain to you what you should even drink, right? It was hard. It was very, what's the word here? It was very not approachable, right? It wasn't approachable to the average person. And so, yeah, there was a huge market space there, though, that Yellowtail wanted to go over, right? Because most wine brands were just competing within the same red ocean to the same type of existing wine lovers. But Yellowtail realized there's this whole world out here of casual, everyday drinkers, right? People that just like to drink beer or just want to have a casual wine every now and then, and they don't want to have to be a wine expert just to have a wine that they can enjoy, okay? So what Yellowtail did is they abandoned this traditional focus of the prestigious vineyards and the aging and all these exclusive, almost snobby kind of concepts, right? And they got rid of the complex terminology that were intimidating for most people to try to buy wine. And instead, they created a drink which is sweet enough to appeal to the masses and actually start going after that larger market of people that like to drink beer and like to drink spirits, right? Not just the wine buffs. Okay, and they went even a step further, and they made only 2 varieties in the beginning, 1 red and 1 white. Now, as you can see now, they have a few more varieties, but they still keep it simple, right? They still keep it really simple. You can see the design that they use. They made it very approachable, very, very aesthetically appealing, okay? Bright colors, simple logo, simple name, simple, characters and concept, right? And by only starting with 2 flavors, 1 red and 1 white, I mean, how much more simple can it get? And this strategy worked so well, they became the fastest growing wine brand in U.S. history, right? And now they're a huge company and doing extremely well, okay? So another example of looking at what was already being done in the market and finding the way to innovate to go after and capture a new demand, which, by the way, another great point in this idea here is that they not only were innovating on the value of the offer and the idea of what was being done in the existing wine industry, but they looked outside of the existing market. They looked to the average everyday beer drinkers and regular people that like to have casual drinks, okay? So they innovated in 2 ways, right? And so these are really powerful concepts to think about as you're thinking about a brand. And I understand if you're brand new to all of this and you're brand new to e-commerce, like you might not be starting here. I've done these at masterminds before, and sometimes, people tend to, like this can go over their head a little bit with the idea of Blue Ocean Strategy, but you should definitely keep this stuff in mind as you're growing your brand, as you're growing your business, because really, at the end of the day, this is where I think the biggest success is created in being able to find a blue ocean opportunity. And I also want to say it doesn't just have to be with physical products, right? It could be with a digital product. It could be with a brand. It could be, there's multiple ways that you can innovate within an industry, like I'm doing with Ecom Empires, for example. Like if you really study what I'm doing and you look at what I've done, I've definitely used this and it's been intentional, right? I studied these books and I studied these concepts and ideas to do what I really wanted to do and to focus on building the type of brand that I wanted to build. Okay, so it can apply to anything, right? Basically, however you see yourself ascending and where you see your business going. Your value proposition is what makes you unique in the marketplace, okay? So you want to think about how you can be different. And the way that you're really going to do this is by first studying the market, right? Like you have to study the market and see what's out there and what's being done to be able to understand how you can do something different. All right, so I hope that you found this video really valuable, no pun intended, really valuable on talking about value proposition and how you can find ways to start differentiating yourself and start, creating your own blue ocean of opportunity, which is where you're going to have so much more demand and ability to create something defensible and scale. And in the next video, now that we've talked about this, we're going to talk about starting to form your brand identity. See you in the next video.